Oh yeah, it's time for a good old rant video, good old showdown session about the Lumix S1R Mark II and the Lumix S1 Mark II. I'm sure at this point you've seen the plethora of videos about overheating with both of these cameras that a bunch of people have been uploading. A lot of them I know personally, although I haven't watched their videos on purpose because I wanted to make my own, stating my truth and only my truth about this subject matter. So yeah, get your water, get your coffee, whatever, because we about to talk some real talk. I have some opinions on things I need to speak about, and we're also going to talk about my personal experience when it comes to overheating with both of these cameras. A few things first. I did not script this video. This is completely off the top of the head. These are just my thoughts coming out from my head straight to the camera. So that's number one. Number two, the gear that I'm using to film this video, I will put on the screen. It's the Pixis and all the other stuff that comes along with it. And I'll also leave affiliate links in the description if you want to pick up any of this stuff, which really helps out the channel. You're going to buy it anyway, so please use the affiliate links. And I think that's it for housekeeping. Listen, I think my expectations when it comes to modern mirrorless cameras are a bit different than maybe a lot of y'all who might be watching this video, right? I'm a realist. I don't expect any camera, whether it's one of these cameras, whether it's a Sony camera, whether it's a Canon, Nikon, Fuji, any of these modern high-powered mirrorless cameras to not overheat. I'm just being real. We are asking every single year for more powerful cameras. We want more megapixels, higher resolutions, faster bit rates, more codecs, more dynamic range, so on and so forth. We want these cameras packed with technology and the latest and greatest, yet we don't want the bodies to get any bigger, okay? And that is flawed logic, y'all. If you know anything about physics, thermodynamics, and this is pretty simple stuff. When you slap a processor in something that has to handle a whole lot of processing, okay, the byproduct is heat. And if we want all of these faster bodies that require more power and generate more heat to remain in these smaller bodies, there's going to be a trade-off. And this is whether it's Lumix, Sony, Canon, like I said, Fuji, whoever the case is. When you want more powerful cameras that require more energy, the byproduct is heat. And the only way to remedy the situation, well, there's two ways. A, you can pick a less powerful camera or make a less powerful camera if you're a manufacturer. Look at the Sony FX3 as an example. The FX3 is a fantastic camera. I will never say that it's not. However, it's not that powerful of a camera, as capable as it is. It's only having to oversample from 12 megapixels down to 8 for 4K. So it doesn't require a lot of energy to get that done. It's also in a body that's big enough to handle whatever energy that processor and sensor, the heat that they generate. So it can effectively get rid of the heat, right? And that's not to say that the FX3 doesn't overheat, because quiet as kept, the FX3, when you put it in really, really demanding circumstances, it can overheat. But the only way to not get the camera to overheat is to either put less powerful internals in it, or if you take one of these two, which are very, very powerful cameras. Both of these are like the freaking Hellcats. Cams loves that word. The Hellcats of cameras, right? But we don't want the bodies to get any bigger. So, the only way that we can remedy it is if we want to put this level of computing power and processing and image processing in it, is to put it in a bigger body, but y'all don't want that. So it's kind of like the trade-off that you have to take with today's modern mirrorless cameras. And that goes for these cameras, and it will be moving forward. This problem will continue to exist with every single high-powered camera release that's in a small body that doesn't have enough fans or a body big enough to get rid of the heat that the camera's generating from doing everything that we're asking it to do. All of this amazing cinema quality stuff in a tiny mirrorless body. The problem will always be there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm not going to act like just because this is a thing that this doesn't impact people in the real world. I do recognize that there are people outside of Tight Shirt Terry who's not just in his YouTube studio filming leaves at 4K 120. Like, there are people who are actually out here, boots on ground, running whole film businesses and stuff like that, using cameras. So while my stakes might not be that high for YouTube videos, somebody like Cam or Kofi or Connor or Zach or Brandon Washington, who they're actually out there taking $15, $20, $30,000 gigs, yes, overheating on set can have real film real world implications, y'all. And while I obviously recognize that, the flip side of it is, if I know that I'm getting into a situation where there's $30,000 on the line, I'm not picking up a mirrorless camera that even has the potential to overheat. There's a reason why cinema cameras exist. There's a reason why you never see cinema cameras overheating, because they have bodies that are big enough to handle the dissipation of the heat, the exhaustion of the heat, and they also have multiple fans to be able to keep up with the load, where these smaller bodies just can't do that because they don't have enough space or fans in them. But we want the high power stuff that are in them. So all that to say, I'm very realistic when it comes to mirrorless cameras and the fact that they're gonna overheat, okay? So I don't expect either one of these cameras to not overheat. I don't expect any camera that I own to not overheat. It's just the reality of the world that I live in when it comes to cameras. So the next thing I wanna talk about is, this is where the rant part kind of starts, right? This idea that Lumix has paid me, because I've been heavily involved in both of these releases, and a bunch of other Lumix creators such as Cam and Kofi and Armando and Zach and, Connor and, everybody else that's part of the Shield gang or Shield team, whatever you want to say. This idea that we've been paid to withhold overheating from you guys and gals, which is the biggest load of crap that let me just state my piece first, okay? I have never been paid a single penny from Lumix. And I don't care about being, like, I will tell y'all when I get paid for stuff. I tell y'all all the time, I got paid for this video, I got paid for that video. Lumix has never given me a dime. So this idea that Lumix is just showing up to my door with hush money, shield money, whatever y'all want to call it, to say, hey, Terry, don't talk about overheating, or don't talk about this, or talk about this feature more than your competitors. Lumix has never paid me a dollar, y'all. The next argument is, oh, well, you got the camera. You just don't want to say anything bad because you think that they're not going to invite you on the next press trip and blah, all your little butthurt comments. Let me tell you something. Two things. A, I don't want to work with any company that tells me I'm not allowed to say anything negative about a product. If that's the case and that's the relationship you want, I'm not the creator for you. My authenticity with my audience is priority number one. Two, my authenticity, my opinion cannot be bought by any company. If you come to my door with $50,000 to go bash a Sony product, I'm going to tell you, you keep that money and don't ever contact me again. That's just how I'm built. I don't do stuff like that. So when y'all come on my channel saying that stupid shit, it really irritates me, because I do my best to try to remain authentic with the audience. The second thing is, we are very communicative with Lumix. We have a whole group chat with them in it, and we tell them about the issues and problems that arise. And Lumix never says, hey, don't you talk about this publicly. They actually appreciate the feedback. They appreciate the feedback from y'all. And you don't have to believe me or take my word. They show it. They are in live streams. They're constantly addressing firmware updates to fix some of the issues X, Y, and Z. So y'all can say whatever you want. We just happen to love these cameras. In my opinion, these are two of the best cameras you can get right now. But that doesn't mean that because I feel like that I'm being paid or I'm biased to Lumix or anything like that. This is just what I choose to roll with right now. So, you do need to realize that different creators test out gear in different ways, all right? So I'm going to use Gerald Undone for an example. When he gets a new camera, he puts it in the lab and test its limits in a lab, so you can have a number that you can reference. You can have a data point that you could actually use as a baseline for how your experience may or may not be, right? And that's fine. We need that type of stuff. But you also have people like me who are not out in the field. I only shoot YouTube projects pretty much now and do personal photography and personal video projects. So my testing is different than Gerald's testing, right? And I think we need that. We also have people like Cam and Kofi and B-Wash and all of them who are actual real film pros who are out there in the world. You need their experience also. You need all of this to be able to form an opinion. And my advice is, when you're considering if one of these cameras is for you, find a creator or creators who have a similar use case as yours so that you can get a good gauge of, hey, how might this camera fit into my workflow? Now, let's start with the Lumix S1R Mark II, which, let's remember, is a photo camera first. This has to be said. It doesn't change the fact that it overheats. but you do need to curb your expectations of what this camera is. It's a photography first camera that happens to have a ton of video features packed into it, because if they wouldn't have put these features in here, you would have been mad that these features were not present. But this is a high megapixel, high powered photography camera with a ton of video specs in it. My experience with the S1R Mark II is kind of unique. I shared with y'all when I first got this camera how I didn't experience any overheating, and for the following months after getting the camera, how I didn't experience any overheating. And this is using a combination of CF Express Type A cards and SD cards and stuff like that. And there was one day about a month and a half ago, I was sitting in my truck filming a video of myself, you know, the same stuff I always do. And the S1R Mark II started overheating to a point where I couldn't even finish the freaking video, right? And I'm like, well, that's strange, because it's never done this before. I'm using the same type of media I've always used, which we know CF Express cards generate a ton of heat. Even when they're not being read and written, CF Express cards generate a ton of heat just by default, okay? So I've never, with that said, experienced any overheating up until that point. But after that point, it seemed like the camera was just prone to overheating all the time. And again, I do recognize that it's a photo first camera, but it's a bomb video camera, so why not use it for video? Well, it was overheating to the point where I felt like I couldn't trust this camera. Even just filming my low stakes YouTube content, which sometimes the takes are 30 to 40 minutes, well, this camera would just start overheating out of nowhere. So I stopped using it. So I hit up Lumix. Lumix said, hey, man, maybe try a low-level format of the card. Maybe try opening the doors. You could use like a grip. You could also plug up an SSD just to get the recording off the camera and into an external device and all that other stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm not mad. And part of using cameras is to work around their shortcomings. So, you know, I was like, I just don't want to kind of deal with that right now, because I have other cameras that I can use that don't suffer from it at all. Needless to say, moving forward, we continue to communicate through Lumix and all that other stuff. So I started using it again. And ever since I started using it again, it's been rock solid. Now, I've only been using it like in the studio on longer takes. So, again, I'm not out in the desert. I'm not filming cars and cowboys and et cetera, all that stuff in 100-degree heat. But that has been my experience so far with the S1R Mark II. It has overheated on me several times. Do I think it's a fantastic video camera? Absolutely. I think, however, the amount of oversampling and stuff that this camera has to do to get you your 8K open gate, your 7.2 open gate, your 6K 30 open gate, your 5.9 open gate, all of those things, it requires a lot of energy to process all of that data, and the heat, in my opinion, the camera just can't seem to handle it for longer stuff. But that's not a knock on the camera. I'm not somebody to just disqualify a camera because of one particular flaw, but it's just something that you need to be mindful of. If you're buying this camera not as a hybrid camera, but as like your primary video first camera, I probably wouldn't recommend it for that. It is a awesome hybrid camera with a ton of features, a ton of video specs that rival cinema cameras, are better than some cinema cameras. But you still got to be mindful that this is a high megapixel photography first camera that does have to process a ton of data, and because of that, heat is the byproduct. So I still use it. I just don't trust it as much for longer takes as something like the S1 Mark II. Now, what is the S1 Mark II? Much, much lower resolution, 24 megapixels, still gives you a ton of frame rates, ton of codecs, all of that stuff. It's partially stacked, so it's a whole lot faster, but it doesn't have to process as much data. This is a 8K sensor. This is a 6K sensor. So we're talking about having to process whatever amount of data that difference is. The S1 Mark II doesn't have to do that. So because of that, in my experience, the S1 II has been way more reliable as a video camera, which personally, I think this is a video camera first. In that regard, even using some of its higher frame rates, in situations where the S1R Mark II has overheated, this thing has ran like a champ for a long time. It's never given me an overheat warning. I've never even had the warning pop up on the S1 Mark II. So when it comes to the camera that I choose to pick up between the two of them, obviously I'm going to pick up, unless I have needs for 8K or super high megapixels, I'm going to pick up the S1 II, because it has been for me a much more reliable camera when it comes to overheating. However, that's not to say that the S1 II doesn't overheat. There have been a few people who have gotten it to overheat, granted, using higher frame rates and more extreme circumstances, as any camera probably would. But I personally haven't had the S1 Mark II overheat. Now, the next thing you'll probably say is, Terry, why didn't you tell about this from the jump? Why didn't you tell me about this when you was in freaking Norway with the S1R Mark II? Well, it wasn't happening in Norway. So why would I tell you something that wasn't happening? Even when I got back from Norway and I brought the S1R Mark II and I switched to it as my primary, it wasn't happening. So there was no reason for me to talk about something that wasn't happening. Again, this is why you need to watch multiple reviewers. Gerald had already found that, hey, this camera is overheated. But in my use case, I test cameras the way I'm going to use them. And in my use case, the way I use them, it wasn't overheating. So I will have no reason to be disingenuous and tell y'all that it's not overheating when it was. The camera wasn't overheating for me up until like a month and 2 or 3 weeks ago, okay? Which is when I brought it to Lumix. I said, hey, man, this is happening. And Lumix said, okay, we're hearing this. And then Cam went to them and Kofi went to them. And we're starting to see as probably the warmer months come for everybody that, yes, the camera is struggling a little bit. But I want to go back to this thing about us being paid. Like, I have never been paid by Lumix. The only 2 people that I know have done paid work with Lumix have been Kofi and Cam, and they were very specific on telling y'all that they were paid, but it was for a project. It was not for hush money purposes or anything like that. They were paid to do a job with Lumix. They did the job with Lumix. Lumix got their deliverables. They got their money. End of story, right? We were not paid to not say anything in Norway. We were not, none of that stuff is true. The only thing that you can maybe potentially say is, hey, maybe Lumix purposely had them go to Norway. I've seen that claim a couple times, which I'm not going to say yes or no. I wouldn't think that they would do something disingenuous like that, but I can't say for sure. And because I can't say for sure, I'm not going to say yes or no, but I have seen the claims. And, to somebody on the opposite side who wants to play devil's advocate, could be plausible. But again, I'm not going to accuse them for something I don't know for sure. I think it's just a case of, we're all in the summertime now. The climates and temperatures are warmer. A lot of us are outside shooting more projects, more demanding projects because it's warm outside. And you're seeing what these cameras can do at their limits. At the end of the day, again, if you want a camera that doesn't overheat, you need to get you a cinema camera or a lower powered camera. The FX3 rarely overheats. The Lumix S5 II series cameras rarely overheat because they have fans and they're not pushing as much juice. Like, they're not requiring as much energy. They're not doing as much oversampling. The bit rates are lower, all that stuff. I hope that didn't just knock me out of focus. I'm using a little hand grip right here from a Focus Pro. But neither here nor there, the point I'm trying to make is, yes, these cameras overheat. They're still, with that, incredibly powerful cameras for the money. But I understand for some people how overheating can be a deal breaker. It's not for me, but if it's a deal breaker for you, then find the camera that works the best for you. There are cinema cameras out there for a reason where you don't need to worry about that. And if you're on a high stakes job, don't depend on any mirrorless camera to not overheat on you. Go rent a cinema camera or buy a cinema camera to help you out so that you don't sacrifice your project, your money, all that other good stuff. Okay, so that is my take on the S1 II and S1R2 overheating. No camera's perfect. I say that all the time. Every mirrorless camera moving forward, as I stated at the beginning of this video, as frame rates and bit rates and codecs and dynamic range, all of those things increase, but the size of the body aren't increasing. So we can't add more fans. There's no way we can stuff more coolant in here. It's going to happen. Again, this is why we have differences in types of cameras, different tools for different jobs. Anyways, I'll shut up now. Let me know what you think about this whole situation down in the comment section. I will be very curious to know what you think. If you come down in my comment section talking crazy, I'm probably going to talk about your mother. I'm just letting you know that. So let's keep it chill. Let's keep it G. These are just cameras at the end of the day. There's no reason to be attacking each other, calling each other names and all that. But if you want to do that, I could do that right with you. Make sure if you like this video, you hit the subscribe button. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers. Would love to have you as a part of the family. It will mean a lot to me. And I think that's it. So until next time, I'm out of here. Tight shirt, Terry Warfield. Peace and chicken grease. I'm out, y'all. Much love. Peace.